Hey folks, this clip is brought to you by Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey from Lockstill Distillery. Make your own luck just like Tennessee football's fast-paced Rattle and Snap offense with Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey. So there was an article from Pro Football Focus. It's called 10 Draft Eligible Quarterbacks to Know. And it is basically just a list of like the top dudes in the quarterback class for 2024 for the NFL draft. And it's Caleb Williams and it's Drake May at North Carolina. It's Michael Penix Jr. at Washington. It is Quinn Ewers at Texas. Bo Nix at Oregon. There's some interesting selections here. But obviously the one that we want to talk about is Joe Milton the third, Tennessee's quarterback. This is at least some legitimate recognition of the fact that Joe Milton could be really, really good. And they say, this is from the Pro Football Focus article, and we'll talk about exactly what they said. They said, get ready for a laser show in Knoxville. Milton has the strongest arm in college football. Quite frankly, it's not even close. His 11.1% big-time throw rate easily led all FBS signal callers. That's a really interesting stat. With at least 100 dropbacks. He has fewer than 700 career snaps across his 5 seasons at Michigan and Tennessee, so it'll be interesting to see how he handles the starting job. So you got to love this, but it really, I like it because, first of all, I feel like he's been disrespected all offseason. And finally, at least when it comes to NFL talk, he's going to get a little bit of that respect. But when will it come for the actual football season? I don't know. We'll see. But what did you think about this, Zach?
Yeah, I think he definitely deserves to be in that NFL draft conversation because if you look at Joe Milton, his attributes, his physical skills, his physical appearance, everything about him, it's a lot like Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson's better with his legs and in the open field, where Milton's a little bit of surprisingly more accurate passer if you look at Anthony Richardson's completion percentage. And I think Will Levis falls in that same category where he's got the big arm, physical stature, but needs to prove a few things at the next level. If Will Levis and Anthony Richardson receive that much hype this past draft season, you got to think that Joe Milton deserves that same hype. I mean, he's got the rocket arm. He's got the, he's 6'5". He's built like a linebacker. He's comparable to Cam Newton in size. He's got to show those things that Cam Newton did, right? Like we said last season that he needs better pocket presence. He needs to know when to take off. He needs to better field vision. There were times where I felt like there were, holes that he could have hit, avenues that he could have taken to get down the field where he's running and he, doesn't go with his blockers or runs right into a defender. He's got to shore up that and get better in those areas. But if he can do that, complete around 60% of his passes and have similar success to Hendon Hooker as far as wins, going maybe, 10-2, 9-3, or whatever in the regular season, I think he has to be in that conversation to be a first-round draft pick just because, he has skills that you can't teach, that you drool over. And if he takes a huge step forward this season, showing that he's progressed since he left Michigan, under Josh Heupel, which is what we expect, and kind of what he showed in that Clemson game, I don't see how he's not a first-round draft pick. I don't see how he wouldn't be in that conversation.
He has some of the clearest physical attributes for an NFL guy that you'll see. I mean, that arm strength is obviously beyond anything really you'll see in college football almost ever. But just his size and general physical presence is ridiculous. And there is definitely, to your point there, he's still got plenty to prove. There's no doubt about that. We've seen him improve, though. And that's probably what I've disliked the most in the narrative around him, is that there's really been no recognition outside of Tennessee fans of that improvement at all. And of course, we say that from the view of how we've watched this kid every single snap he's taken at the University of Tennessee. And from that first one that he had against, what was the very first game? The
Bowling Green last
Bowling
year,
Green
in 2021.
Yeah. I mean, from then to that Clemson game, it's not necessarily night and day. He still can be overthrow Joe and things like that. But his accuracy and decision-making and his comfortability in that system is at a complete other level. And I think there's a real chance that he could storm into the season and then be one of the best quarterbacks in America. I mean, is he going to beat out a guy in terms of NFL ability. Is he going to be a guy like Caleb Williams? Probably not. I mean, Caleb Williams is sort of just that prototypical, like, oh, that's the dude you draft as an NFL quarterback.
But even Caleb Williams plays in a weird, non-traditional offense, you know, with Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, he definitely does. And I mean, and also you look at like last season, you got to assume he'll continue to improve. But like last season kind of crumbled in that championship game against Utah.
TCU or Utah. That's right. Yeah.
Utah. And then in the bowl game, they lost to Tulane in the bowl game, didn't they? To the ACL less running back that now plays for the Titans.
But he's healthy. That was his answer to his question. Every question asked about, do you have an ACL? He was just like, yeah, I'm healthy.
I mean, he's technically not lying, I guess. But I like Mr. Jones' comment here. He said Milton has the strongest arm in the NFL also. That's probably true.
Yeah.
Obviously is not in the NFL yet, but like who else has the arm strength that you've seen from Joe Milton where he can just shoot from the hip a 60-yard pass?
Josh Allen, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Mahomes can sling it pretty far too, but I'd still take Milton in that bet if you're betting on who can throw it down the field the furthest.
Yeah, but Elias does make a good point here in terms of evaluating Joe Milton. He says, I don't really know what the accuracy baseline is for this specific system with how open Tennessee schemes their wide receivers, and he says it's got to be inflated. I would agree with that.
We did see some throws in that Clemson game. The first touchdown to Brew McCoy in the back of the end zone was kind of a narrow window, and then there was I want to say there was a third down play near the middle of the field where they're driving. The game was still kind of tight at that time. I think he hit Ramel Keaton in a very narrow window. That was one of the more impressive throws I'd seen him make, and it was a throw where his velocity. He was pretty close to Keaton, but he didn't take anything off of it because the window wasn't that big. And I think he knew he had to dial up the arm strength there, and he fit it in there, and it was a completion, kept the drive alive. I'll have to go back and try to find that. But he's shown that he can make some of those throws. Obviously, though, you know, two plays is not enough to really determine if you can make that throw consistently enough to excel in the NFL. But it's a good point. You're not asked to throw into a lot of tight windows in this offense.
Not typically. And that criticism is always going to stay around, but I you love like Hendon Hooker's reaction to that during this offseason where he's just like, how is it my fault that my dudes are open? You know, I'm sorry. Did I not get them the ball? And which is the perfect response to that is you do what you can do. It doesn't mean you don't have the ability. And with Milton, if he can continue on that line of getting the ball to where it needs to go accurately, I think it's a huge advantage in some sense if the balls are catchable, that he can get it there more quickly, because it kind of, I don't want to say it solves things like timing issues, but it makes timing issues not as much of an issue, if that makes sense, where you zip the ball in there. Oh, well, you were late on the throw. Well, the ball was coming in at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And so it still got there in time. It can, I kind of feel like that one in the back of the end zone was a little bit like that. The one that you mentioned, just an extremely tight window. And you sort of go like, oh, if that got there a half second later, it might not have been completed, but it did, because Joe Milton throws the ball at 1,000 miles an hour. And he just has so much upside. I love that he can at least get this recognition. The only other SEC quarterback that was on that entire list was Jaden Daniels at LSU, who obviously got his head beat in by Tennessee last season.
He did improve quite a bit as the season went along.
He did. He definitely did.
Brian Kelly started him over, Garrett Nussmeier, Walker Howard, who is now he was a 5-star guy. He's transferred to Ole Miss now. He had guys there. Miles Brennan, I think, was still there before he finally kind of stepped away from football. He had quite a journey and a lot of injuries that he dealt with and never really was able to reach his full potential. But obviously they saw something in Daniels. Maybe he can be a legitimate NFL prospect. But you're right. Outside of those two, there's not a lot of, elite SEC quarterbacks going into this season. Maybe somebody pops up out of nowhere and surprises. That's always possible. But it does seem like it could be kind of a down year for the quarterbacks in the SEC.
Few things go better with a Tennessee sports victory than an awesome whiskey. And actually, me and Jonathan Crompton had a drink of whiskey during the postgame show of every football win this past season. And more specifically, we had Rattle and Snap Tennessee Select Straight Whiskey. You can see it right there. Behind me, Log Still Distillery has released a new Tennessee whiskey product line called Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey, named after a long-forgotten game of chance. Rattle and Snap is a whiskey for those who make their own luck. There's a 4-year and an 8-year version of Rattle and Snap whiskey, and actually, this one behind me is the 4-year version right here. It's perfect for making your favorite whiskey cocktails or just drinking neat. It's really great stuff, and I mean, you can see it there. The bottle looks great. 2, you can find Rattle and Snap right now in stores across Tennessee, and Rattle and Snap is also available in Kentucky, Indiana, and Mississippi. So run, don't walk to get yourself some Rattle and Snap whiskey, and follow Rattle and Snap on Instagram at Rattle and Snap Whiskey. That is Rattle and Snap Tennessee Select Straight Whiskey. Well, and you have some situations where you literally don't know who it's going to be. Like, who is it for Georgia this season? Do they have that guy set? I know there's dudes that they probably want it to be. I can act like I'm paying close attention to what Georgia's doing, but there's some situations like that where that quarterback could end up being very good, but where exactly does that fall? You have who's the kid at Kentucky? He came from NC State. Leary.
Devin Leary.
Yeah. Devin Leary. You have some guys like that where you look and you go like, okay, he was pretty good in NC State's system, but Kentucky's system in the last few years has been trash. And so,
well, it wasn't so bad in 2021, and they have that, okay. And they have that OC coming back. You know, Cohen that was with the, I think the Rams briefly.
So I just typed this in to see what the quarterbacks are potentially this season for different teams. This is College Football Network. Super random. I don't think that they are really bringing a whole lot of expertise here, but this is their QB rankings for the SEC. Number 1, Will Rogers at Mississippi State. He's really good. I don't hate that selection. Then Devin Leary at Kentucky. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that this is a Kentucky fan that wrote this. Because nobody is putting Devin Leary there except for a Kentucky fan. Jaden Daniels at LSU at number 3, KJ Jefferson at 4, number 5, Spencer Rattler, and then Milton comes in at 6. They also mentioned Nico there, but I think Joe's going to be the starter.
Yeah.
Spencer Sanders or Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. But yeah, like Texas A&M, Connor Wegman, who? Robbie Ashford at Auburn was, a nobody last year. AJ Swan was so bad at Vandy, but I don't even know. Is this even?
They had Mike Wright too, but they were
Wright transferred, didn't he?
Yeah, and they were like splitting time last season.
I mean, they were both so bad. But this was just that was the first thing that came up when I looked at.
Who do they have listed for Georgia?
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to find. So they have Tyler Buckner, Jalen Milroe, or Ty Simpson at Alabama, which, well, good luck with that.
Probably going to be the Notre Dame guy.
Yes. Graham Mertz at Florida. I hope that's right. Mertz at Florida. And then Carson Beck or Brock Vandagriff. Those are the two. I
think it's going to be
Georgia.
Beck probably at Georgia. Is what it sounds like.
And Brady Cook at Missouri. I mean, he wasn't horrendous last year. Brady Cook, he wasn't good. But he was better than the kid at Vandy. I know that much. Maybe there's a Vandy fan that was writing that. I don't know. That's here's Sports Illustrated. Let's see what they say. Theirs is very different. So KJ Jefferson is number 1. Again, don't hate that pick. Will Rogers 2. Georgia's quarterback at 3. So they're just going straight, total disrespect to Joe Milton, to a number of guys, but straight over Joe Milton. Then they go at number 4, Alabama's quarterback. And then Jaden Daniels, they're going over a dude that beat Alabama last year. They're just going, whip, nope. Whoever Alabama's quarterback is, Jalen Milroe was terrible every time he played.
There's really no reason for Alabama to be getting hyped like they are, except for the fact that they're Alabama. And that's not to say they might come out and go 12-0 in the regular season and make another run. I'm never ever going to discount Nick Saban or say that he's cooked until he retires, but their quarterback situation is not good. I mean, you got a guy, you're taking a reject from Notre Dame, basically. I mean, they went and got a guy from Wake Forest, who I'm not even sold on. I've watched Sam Hartman play in person a couple of times. And that was another weird, unique offense that Dave Clawson, I mean, Tennessee fans should be familiar with him and his kind of unique offense. And it's even kind of gotten more unique since he left Tennessee. It's these weird mesh points where they hold on to the ball a real long time. It's in theory the same thing Tennessee's doing as far as trying to read the defense and react. But I'm not sold on that guy. And then Alabama, takes the guy that Notre Dame didn't want to start, and he's probably going to be their starter over Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe. It's not a good situation. And we saw Alabama's defense looking very suspect last year, and they lose their best defensive player in Will Anderson, and then Byron Young, the Alabama version of Byron Young, going to the NFL as well. I mean, it could be a challenging year for Alabama.
I completely agree. And
not that I'm feeling great about Tennessee going to Tuscaloosa. That's going to be a dogfight no matter what, even at best. Even if Tennessee does somehow pull that game out, I don't think it'll probably be a one-score game.
Elias in the comments, he says, I got to have Daniels and Jefferson at 1 and 2 without any doubt. Again, picks that I don't hate. I would put some combination of Will Rogers, KJ Jefferson, Daniels in those top spots. Devin Leary.
I think you got to go Daniels pretty high. I mean, he led LSU to an SEC championship game appearance in his first season, Brian Kelly's first season coming out of the SEC West.
Yeah.
I mean, they got an assist from Tennessee, beating Alabama, but I think you have to give Daniels that respect for now.
For sure. I mean, they're just known entities. That's the difference between what Georgia is going to put out there, what Alabama is going to put out there. We've seen these guys play. So either way, the clear, I think the consensus here is that no one is giving Joe Milton any kind of respect, because in both of those articles assumed that he's competing with Nico, which there's really been no indication of that at all. And I mean, it's Joe's team until it's not. And then obviously he's way down the list on both of these. And so I would say, thank goodness at least some NFL writers have a brain in their head. And that actually, I kind of take that back. At least some of these NFL writers have taken some notice of Joe Milton. But regardless, just want to talk about it, lead off with that, because it's always fun to talk about the quarterback situation in Tennessee. It's what everybody always wants to know about. So,
yeah, and if Milton can take a big step this season and he doesn't even have to be Hendon Hooker. Just, go have a fantastic year where maybe you're in that Heisman conversation a little bit, but Tennessee's winning games. They're getting back up to at least 10 wins. And you go back and you look at everything that was said about him at Michigan since he left Michigan and arrived at Tennessee, and those overthrows 21 and the talking point of Joe Milton and how he's never going to figure it out. If he ever figures it out, he'll be great. And then he's been, redshirt senior, still hasn't figured it out. If he goes and flips that narrative upside down, I think it'll really set Tennessee off on a, recruiting hot streak when it comes to quarterbacks. They kind of already are, but it'll just intensify that even more, because it shows what Josh Heupel and his staff can do in developing quarterbacks. And I mean, how long has it been since they could do that? Since Cutcliffe was in town? I mean, Lane Kiffin maybe in 2009 did great with Jonathan Crompton, but outside of those two guys, it's been a long time since Tennessee's been able to develop quarterbacks like this.
It really has been, and it's amazing to see. So hopefully everything that we want for Joe Milton comes to fruition, and we'll keep, if nobody else is going to give him respect, we will here on the Big Orange Podcast. So